Okay, we're going to do a little tutorial on how to draw a robot. Now, I did a stop motion, fast motion version before, but I thought it might be more instructive if I talked through how to draw a robot. So, one of the first things is when you're drawing robot is you draw his body, give what's called a line of action to him, that he basically is kind of looks like he's going in a forward motion. So kind of his back and his front line have some curves to it. Also, if you're right-handed or if you're left-handed, when you're drawing a curve, you'll see that your hand naturally goes in a specific direction. So one of the things I like to do is I will turn the paper to get it to go in the direction I want it to. You get a smoother line, you get a more accurate line. Now, the other thing too is we're going to do another technique called drawing through. And what that is when you're drawing a 3D shape, sometimes it really helps to get it right spatially if you draw the shape through as if we're seeing in an X-ray. So for instance, the top of his head, we're not going to see the top of his head, but if you draw through, lightly draw the other side of the ellipses that we're not going to see, you're going to get a better idea spatially of where he belongs and where his parts go, which we will get into. All right, so his eyes, they're always a little bit close to the top of his head. Here and here. They're rather large. And also don't make them too circular like that, because they got to be more sly and make them look a little more smart. So they're more like glasses. And the other thing to do is add an extra line there because you want to show a bit of dimension. Now with his eyelids, if we're going to use any of that, which we could, this is another technique with drawing through to make them even. We'll just do a line like that. And now you can see we got the two lines for his eyelids and they kind of match up. And then of course what we'll do is, I don't need that right now. You know what? Get out of here. There we go. Now the other thing too is learn a little bit about eyeline. So when you have a character looking at you, or you have a character that you want to be looking at the person who's seeing it, that's kind of important to have that eye contact going on. So basically, I'll block out the eyes right here. Now, the other thing is eyeline is just very specific about where it goes to make it look like a character is looking at you. Here's one trick to do if you have a character looking straight at you, is to have the pupils, as opposed to like here and here, which is a little more vague and vacant. What if you take the eye line, so you have the eyes here and here. What you do is make the eyes a little bit cross-eyed. Bring them towards the center. And this is something I learned when I was designing stuff for the Jim Henson Company, because they have eye lines down. The Muppets have the best eye lines ever. Is basically you bring it so it's a little cross-eyed, but it will always be making contact. Now with this, robot's kind of looking off to the side to see the audience member. So I think what we'll do with this is I'm going to put one eye there. I'm going to put one eye there for now. Maybe it should go there. I'm not sure yet. You know what we'll do? Let's get back to that. Let's come back to where his eye line should be. Because also looking forward would be another good eye line, because he's very self-assured. Okay, then next, mouth. His mouth, smirking, confident. Now his arms. Same thing with the arms. The arms come about center, and what I'll do is I'll draw a circle where the shoulder's going to be. Do the same thing. Draw through. Draw that circle in the opposite, even though we're not going to see it, but it will help you place the arm in a more accurate volume of how big it's going to be, where it's going to end. Same thing here. Then he has his little wrist cuffs here and here. You can draw through on those too to see what that oval is going to look like. Now the wheels, his wheels. Well, let's do his claws first. His claws are a simple C shape, like this. But one of the things to do is when you're looking at it in a manner like this, where we're kind of seeing it as a 3D shape, I usually will draw them like this. You see how this one line comes out here? It gives it a little dimension. So it's almost like you're drawing half that way and then half that way. You're drawing them together like this. And of course, your shading can be another element of shading can add a little bit more dimension. That is what I was trying to say. Same here, the claw over here. And again, draw through. That way we won't be inaccurate which parts we'll see and won't see. His wheels. So the wheels usually have the same thing going on. If I want him moving, he's in forward motion. The wheels should be ovals that are kind of elongated as if they are also moving forward and they have some motion to them, some speed. The other thing is if robot's standing still and we just see him from the front angle, usually the wheels, they lean in just a little bit because it shows weight. It shows his heaviness. So it's like they lean in just a little bit like that. So now with these wheels, we got 4 of them. Now, here's the other thing. Draw through. So we're seeing that this one. So that means that these are going to be over here. The one behind that we won't see, we're just going to see a little tip of it right there. So that's why we draw through, just so we'll see an accurate version of how that's going to look. Fenders like this, or little wheel wells, whatever we want to call them. Then his hatch. The hatch is always right in the front of his chest. Okay, so now we've gotten to the point where we kind of got this all sketched out, and we can take what's called a kneaded eraser. It's very soft. Don't want that in there. Very soft. You knead it like dough. Get it kind of cleaned up. Get some bite to it. And we're just going to take out some of this stuff that we don't need. Take out some of our draw through. All right. Now we're going to make the lines a little more solid. Now that we have a nice sketch in there, let's make the lines a little bit more solid. And something else we can do to add some more dynamics to the drawing is line weight. Line weight just adds a little bit of dynamics to your drawing. You keep, usually what I do is a general rule for line weight, thicker at the bottom, lighter at the top. It just puts the weight and the gravity at the bottom of the character. There you go, we'll make that one thick. Same thing here, we'll do the wheels. Then do a little bit of rough shading right there. See this one sticks out a little bit, rough shading right there. You got to have an idea of how it's going to be in 3 dimensions because it gives you a feel. Like when we were turning these guys into CG characters for the show, I had been sculpting toys for many years, and I was a sculptor in special effects. So I had a very good idea of how to take a 2D image and imagine a 3D volume. Um, so for me, going from 2D art to CG art really was something I could wrap my head around, because the other thing about that was I worked in puppetry and did a bunch of shows that involve puppets. And that's definitely, when you're sculpting the puppets, you're uh, setting up the sets, shots, everything like that. You're definitely thinking about that as a 3D world, because you have real sets, solid places. You've got to have puppet stations, what they call. And so CG was a lot like doing puppetry, the design, storyboarding process, those types of things. All right, here's his R. Now we're going to do his arms. And as you remember, his arms have segments to them. One of the ways to do the segments is you can do the same thing. You can do the drawing through, because imagine that the segments of the arms are just a set of ellipses like this. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to show the one side, but make sure and get the curve. Don't straighten them out. Don't have the arm like this and kind of go like that, because now it's flat. We're going to keep this nice round dimensions. And I draw digitally. I draw in Cintiq. I paint in Cintiq, but I physically paint. I paint with acrylics. And so I think actual doing physical drawing as well as digital drawing is very helpful for your brain and for helping yourself to figure out spatial, like when you have techniques to figure out spatially how things are going to work on the page. That'll help you when you're doing things in 3D too. All right, so heavier line at the bottom, and same thing here. We can make that wheel a little bit heavier. Same thing here. Let's just do, so his fenders, wheel wells, whatever we call that. I'm not adding the posts right now, but they would probably go right about there. This is just more like feeling. So it's very different. Like the way I draw a robot and the way the CG model looked in the show, they have a lot of differences and consistencies and inconsistencies, but this is basically um, the energy I like to bring to the drawing. So again, let's do a little bit of shading. We'll leave a little bit of light on that side of the wheel. Get these guys. Thin line on top. Remember that. Heavy line on the bottom. A little bit of line weight. Just makes it more of a dynamic, interesting drawing. Little claws here. There we go. Then a little shading. Now, of course, when we get into, do a little drawing through here. And you see, this is a little more dynamic because of the way his arm curves back. So we can do these, and then that one with the curves going this way, but then at a certain point, the shape turns around. Now the curves are going to go this way. Again, just a nicer feel. Keeps the volume alive, keeps the shape alive. Right now, let's get back to that eye line. I'm gonna straighten these out a little bit. Probably. Oh, look, I'm making a terrible tangent. Oh no, look. See, that is something that I do all the time that you're not supposed to do. And that is put two shapes just close enough so they're almost touching, but not quite. It's annoying. It's called a tangent. And I draw them all the time. And I think a lot of artists do. Better to have, to avoid tangents, better have part shapes separated or overlapping, not just barely touching. That's annoying. So let's not make tangents here. Don't make tangents like I do. Here, let's do this. Unfortunately, when I'm drawing, and of course, when I'm running a show and I'm production designing and I have a design team, I'm always calling them out on their tangents. And then when I draw stuff, I draw tangents. But I make sure and tell everyone about them just because it's something we all do. All right. These eyes, they're not too big. Remember, robot's eyes are not too big. They're not little tiny dots, unless he's freaked out. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do with eyes and emotion. So like, let's do a quick sidebar on that. Here's a side quest on eyeballs and emotion. See the way they're so tiny? That could be angry. That could be like, what? Now let's say we make them really big. That is also kind of like a what? Angry like that. Or like big. Or you can make them like really big. Think like, weepy big, like, oh my God. I don't think we ever did, but then you put little highlights, little almost anime highlights, look really sad. Like a kitten. Yeah, so anyways, fun with eyeballs. A lot you can do. But for now, let's just make them kind of more just like normal eye size in the middle. And I'm going to post some of there's some good drawings that I found on one of my drives where we were kind of showing like how far do we want robot to be able to squash and stretch. And so I did a bunch of drawings for that because squash and stretch was definitely part of the show. And I mean, it was such a big part of the slapstick of the show that I think it's important to occasionally draw that. Now let's do a little bit on shading. Pick a light direction if you want to do some shading. Let's say the sun's coming from here. So then that means that, see that line? So just kind of like go here. Figure that the sun is on the front side. That means this side's going to have a shadow on it. This side's also going to have a shadow on it. But then to show that it might be behind his body, you can then put it in an even deeper shadow over here, like as it disappears, curves around his body. And then you could put another shadow on his cuff, but then you could have this little bit, like if you were doing a really polished drawing, with light on it. And what that does is that just helps sell the shapes. If we were doing another thing you can do for light and shadow, like his eyes probably have a little bit of shadow going here and here. This has a little bit going here. Make that a tighter line like that. And same thing, let's just add a little bit of shadow here. And let's put a shadow here because we shadowed the wheel. That would mean that everything falls into shadow here, right? Same thing, this would fall into shadow here. And you might even have a little bit of a shadow at play. So if the sun's coming down here, maybe there's a little bit of a shadow at play here. And then if you wanted to add some dimension to the R's, to the R, you could kind of like have shadow and dimension there. Now, one of the other tricks is, let's say we wanted to, show a little bit of dimension. One of the things we could do is, these are harder eraser for this. One of the things we could do is we could just erase what would look like a highlight in his arm segments. And that would show that maybe there's a little light showing. So you can see how we just add a little bit more dimension. Then you could even make the thinnest line just to kind of connect them a little bit. But then it just shows that there's a brilliance, like it's catching some light and there's some dimension there. So this is basically robot default